This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission, the Individual Advancement Program for fiscal year 2021. And this is the grant review panel that has assembled virtually for this. I am Lori Burns-McRobbie, Commissioner from Bloomington. Today is April 16th, and we are meeting by conference call and streaming live from a webinar, and want to thank you all for being part of this virtual gathering under considerably unique circumstances, shall we say. We welcome applicants and other guests who may be listening in today and would like to remind you that you are muted for this review. There is no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel discussion. So you are observing the discussion only. At this time, we would like the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, their occupation, and where they are from in the state. And I'll just call you out in order, starting with Darren.
Looks like he's no longer connected to audio at the moment. So
okay.
Oh, maybe he's just returned, sorry.
Okay, Darren, are you with us? Why don't we, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself, and
Sure,
then
yes,
we'll come back to Darren when he's back with us.
I'm Chris Sopczynski from South Bend, Indiana.
And Ben?
I'm Ben Valentine in Indianapolis, Indiana.
And Darren? Well, I think we've lost Darren for the moment. Thought this was just going to be a momentary glitch. Doesn't appear to be.
Chapin, will you help him call in? I will indeed. I'll send a message.
Well, and in the interest of keeping things moving while we do that, Darren is also from Indianapolis, Program Director for Indy Fringe. So now we will begin the review panel. This is how the process will work. I will announce the application and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide his or her assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications do not need to be recapped since everyone will have read it. So you just need to provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments, and likewise for the third. We are not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives that each panelist brings to the table. After the last reader has finished, I will open the discussion for final comments from anyone. And just to remind people, in the interest of time, we're looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints, and recognize that each of you may be shifting perhaps some of your perspectives based on what your fellow panelists are saying, and hence the reason for the final discussion. If any panelist has a conflict of interest regarding a particular proposal, that panelist will be placed on hold while the application is reviewed. But we don't actually have any conflicts of interest on this panel, so that won't happen. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. And it is common for scores to change as a result of the broader discussion. Those scores are automatically saved. Are there any questions? And Darren, do we have you back?
Yes, can you hear me?
Great, we can hear you.
Right. Good.
Thanks. So let's begin. We'll start with the application for the Individual Advancement Program from Smith. And the first reader for this one is Darren.
Yes, thank you. This was a project related to the production of a film and the public screening of the film, and going right to the evaluation criteria. In the first section, the impact on the artist's career development. In general, I found that this entire section was well represented in the application. In terms of career stage, the applicant was very clear that I was in the early stage of development and had a vision for a forward path, which was really great. And also, in terms of this project's potential impact on his career, certainly the opportunity to get a film in the can and out in front of an audience and taking his own idea all the way through from idea to public screening, that's a significant impact on any filmmaker's journey. And I think this would be very beneficial to the advancement of his career. In terms of anything that might have been either lacking from that section of the application or might have been represented a little bit better, personally, I would have liked to have seen just a little more detail in terms of that public screening aspect. There was kind of mention of, hope to have a public screening, and perhaps it would happen like this. For a really strong application, we might focus on, even if you don't know what the details are going to be, imagine them in detail and work towards that. Tell us about what date you think it might happen, and where it would happen, and how many people would attend, and what that might actually look like. Would help frame that aspect of the project a little bit more clearly. Moving on to the quality of the artist's work, this also was a fairly strong section of the application. The supporting materials I really appreciated. I felt like it gave us confidence that the applicant had some basic experience in creating unique and interesting visuals in the storytelling aspect of the filmmaking. And I would imagine, based on what I was seeing, that if there were greater resources, there's potential for great growth in the artistic vision there and in the technical achievement. I would advise the applicant, just based on what I was seeing, and I think it might have helped strengthen the application if there were some part of a forward-looking plan that included some secondary education, some higher education of some sort, not only to help sort of fast track the applicant's understanding of technical filmmaking and that aspect of it, but also to collaborate with other filmmakers, to get a chance to be in an environment with a lot of people doing the same thing and with the same ambitions, and start to grow a network of support and collaborators and colleagues. So I would advise that might be something the applicant could look forward to and would further help develop the career. Also, so this is me as a grant reader. One thing I always focus on is how much attention was put into the actual writing of the application, the technical writing of the application. And the reason I do that is because that's an indication to me, because I don't get to know this person. I can't, I'm not interacting personally with the applicant, but the amount of detail and attention they give to proofreading their application and making sure the grammar and the spelling and the syntax and the sentence structures and just the clarity of communicating their vision in the application, that's an indication to me of how much detail and effort and precision is going to be put into any effort that the applicant might do, including the project itself. So it's just a little window for me into, you know, level of detail and oversight. The application I felt could have benefited from a little proofreading, some a little more attention to narrative structure, and that would help us as readers be confident that the final outcome was going to be similarly well overseen. Moving on to the public benefit and community engagement. So this is tough. This was kind of half and half for me. So obviously the public screening of the film is a great bit of public outreach and community engagement. People would be clearly engaged in the project at that final stage, and I felt like the applicant had a good grasp on defining a demographic that would be interested in attending this screening and would benefit from it. And some of those demographic groups were people who we want to see engaged in things like this. So I thought that was great. On the other hand, I would love to have seen more engagement on the front end in the development aspect. I think the application would have benefited from having some sort of opportunity for some of those segments of the community that are going to benefit on the back end to have some input in the development process or the creative process or some interaction there. So like I say, that was kind of half and half for me on that section. In terms of feasibility, again, there were positive and negative aspects of the application on this end. The expenses and income I felt were really reasonable, and but the totals didn't match, which is sort of a basic requirement of the grant. So that was a technical issue in terms of calculation and the way the grant was laid out, but ultimately the project income and the project expenses don't match up, even though the expenses are reasonable. I think what happened was that we didn't get a listing of the expenses that were going to be covered by the ticket income and the personal contribution. The applicant just told us what would be covered by the grant funds, not how the ticket income and personal contribution would be spent. And that's something, you know, that would be really helpful for us to understand the total picture of the expenses rather than just those that are impacted by the grant funding. And in terms of the timeline, the feasibility aspect of the timeline, would love to have just seen some more detail in there as well. Specific dates, benchmarks that would be met along that list of calendar dates, just helps us get a better understanding of how the project progresses. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Chris, do you have any additional different opposing comments to add?
Do just a few. I certainly, this is he's clearly, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I did have a couple of things though. I think that maybe if he would have just run a spell check through, I think that he could have gotten a lot of the typos and things cleared up pretty quickly. I wasn't sure in reading it whether he was in school or not. He had mentioned in the grant that he had he really felt by learning by doing. However, on his resume, it said that he was at IUPUI and he was in media, arts, and science. So I'm not sure where he was at on everything or whether he's still in school or attended and dropped out or whatever. But anyway, there is some education, or has been some education going on there. He did mention also that there was a lighting person that he was going to hire in the beginning of the grant, and then I didn't see that person in the budget. So I was I wasn't sure where that was coming from or whatever. I noticed in the project summary, it was just like a tagline about the movie, but it never said like, this is a short film about, or the working title is. And I think if anybody from the public read it, they wouldn't quite know what it was, if it was a short, if they were doing some writing, or if it was a film or whatever. The other thing is, I think he has some wonderful, wonderful opportunities for further funding, and a lot of viewers, if you talk to like AA or psychologists or social workers or people who are working in the area of alcoholism, I think that those people would be really supportive. And you know, there might be financial opportunities for the film, and so I think that there's a whole door that could open there for him. So that's very, very exciting, and his work is certainly good, and I think that that is it on my end.
And should Ben comment at this point? I think we're
Yeah, let's open it up for any additional.
open up for, yes.
For any other panelist
Right.
available. I second everything that's been said. I love Chris's idea of working in partnership with some community organizations, or I mean, the opioid crisis here and alcoholism is could really root that work in research and in community impact. I find that working with lots of artists and creatives throughout my time, that people get so resistant to like they focus on an artist's vision and forget that details, spell check, clear plans really, at the end of the day, like make or break a lot of work. And so that's been said. And so, yep, second everything.
Thank you. Chris or Darren, anything further to add?
No.
Okay, so now each panelist needs to finalize your scores and update your online comments. And I'll give you just a minute to do that. Let me know when you're all ready to go again.
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you.
This is Chris. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Ben, you're good.
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, so we are moving on to grant number 2 from Zink. And Ben, you are the first reader for Zink.
That is me. Yeah, so this application was really challenging for me in that it seems like the Jason Zink is on a really big moment in his creative career and has some amazing work and talent, and is dealing with a lot of hardships economically and how to move forward. So it feels simultaneously like an important time to receive a grant, and also I fear that 2,000 is like much too little to have the impact that is kind of needed to, or maybe desired to, keep him doing the great work that he's been doing. So in this first section, impact on artist's career, I kind of teeter on this. He has a very clear plan and clear budget, and it's reasonable, and he's articulated that very well. But then there's kind of other problems that he keeps referencing, like the amount of money he's put in additionally, and needing to donate plasma every week, that makes it simultaneously seem like a very good time to give this grant, and also like it won't have the impact that is kind of needed. Working through it. Like I said, really, I mean, I haven't watched the movie. It's really hard to judge by a trailer, but it looks very professional. It's not my genre, but I know people whose genre this is, and it looks like something they would love and want to watch. And I'm excited to see that being made in Indiana by someone who's largely self-taught. So it's something that I think deserves support. The public benefit aspect is hard. Again, kind of having a screening, filming locally in Indiana is important, but it kind of felt maybe tacked on to the core mission, which was continuing his artistic career. And I don't want to belittle that, because I believe in just supporting the arts for art's sake. So I kind of I struggled with this parameter of on the Indiana Arts Commission side. So, but I believe that this is a person with talent and deserves support. Yeah, and then again for feasibility, developing this plan, shopping it around, getting a poster. And he says it himself, like he kind of needs 20,000, but 2,000 might be very helpful right now. And so, yeah, I really struggle with this. I was really upset to see myself as the leader of this review, but a lot of talent, a pretty clear plan, an important moment in the artist's career, his career. And yeah, I'm interested to hear what other people thought. And
Okay, Darren, you're our second reader.
Yes, thank you so much. So I empathize with your struggle on the first reader, and so I'll just kind of go point by point again and just give some clinical perspective from my end. So in terms of the impact on the artist's career development, I did feel like he gave us a clear picture of his history and who he is and what his vision is. And certainly, again, to develop and pitch on a festival tour has a real clear connection to his career trajectory and would be extremely beneficial thing for him to be able to do. One of the aspects of this part of the application that I had trouble with was I didn't get a clear idea of what the pitch was and where it was going to go. I would have liked to have seen more detail and information on what those festivals were, what specific festivals and competitions were being targeted, and maybe even the names or links to some of the production and distribution companies and producers and investors that were being pitched. That would have shown perhaps a real solid infrastructure and underpinning for the entire project, that this has been so detailed and thought out. I know exactly what it's going to be, and perhaps he does, but the application didn't give us that information. I would have loved to have seen that. And it also, obviously, the application indicated that the script that was being pitched wasn't yet finished, but the concept, if we'd had some more detail, though, of like the essence of it, if we could have gotten a sense of what the story was, maybe even a title or a concept, we might have had a little more detail to put on the bones of the structure of the project. In terms of the quality of the artist's work, sorry, I lost my place there on the application. Yeah, the English and Film Studies at Purdue is a great foundation for what he's doing, and he seems to have self-taught on the software and the equipment. I think that's great. the success with previous projects was, and the technical skill was terrific. And the narrative. So again, this is going back to my comments a little bit from the last review, which is I tend to focus a lot on how much detail was put into the construction of the application, and was there attention paid to spelling and grammar and sentence structure and narrative storytelling of what the project is. And I will say that the narrative was in his authentic voice. I really got a sense of that I was hearing the voice of the applicant. But if the responses had just had a little more structure in terms of specifically answering the questions that were being asked in the application, it might have helped a reader grasp and understand the real parameters of the project a little bit better. In terms of public benefit, community engagement, there wasn't a lot in my reading of a lot of two-way community engagement within the time frame of the project. He mentioned a Q&A session at the festivals and maybe a general plan for future local screenings, but I didn't get a real sense of how the public would be involved going forward. And then the real problem was the feasibility, and the first reader touched on this, just financially, the fact that it seemed that the project costs really seemed to vary anywhere from $1,000 to $20,000, and there was a range of numbers associated with the travel aspects, and I would have loved to have seen more detail and sort of really identifying those expenses very specifically. And the minimum contribution of personal income in the application from the applicant was $2,000, even to achieve the minimum parameters of the project. And as first reader indicated, the financial situation currently of the applicant makes it difficult to imagine that even that minimum $2,000 might be able to be met as a match on this application and for this project. So those are my additional thoughts. As the first reader said, I would love to see this applicant move forward in their career. Perhaps some sort of financial stability first would make this next career step in this aspect of their life more feasible. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Darren. Opening it up for general discussion.
I've been around a lot of independent filmmakers and people trying to build their careers, and you know, it's a really, really tough road. The one thing I was taken by is that he has gotten worldwide distribution before, which is really a phenomenal thing. I mean, that's really hard to do, and he has achieved that. But again, I don't know how much you can, you know, the discrepancies and the two, you know, needing as much as 20,000 to be able to get funding, and that does, that is an issue, I think. And are you hearing me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. You know, he is working on the right steps. I mean, his next steps is to find investors and so on. And I think his plan is accurate. And it seems like also that if he could have included a title, I think that would have been good, and a little bit better description of the film might have just probably pulled me in a little bit more. And let's see. I think that is it for right now. I do think that there's a stronger public following for horror films. There's so many horror film festivals all around that, the people viewing it, there's plenty out there. I don't know how much in Indiana per se, but there are many such film festivals. So I think that's the end of my comments, and I certainly agree with everyone else. And it was a kind of, I wouldn't quite say gut-wrenching, but a very difficult decision, because where he's at in his career. So, and that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Ben or Darren, any further comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Well, we will now give you a few minutes to update your scores, finalize your online comments, and just let me know when you're ready to move on. Everybody ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm ready.
Darren, you ready? Good to
Yep.
go. Ben, you're good to go? Okay.
Yep.
Well, this actually concludes the Individual Advancement Program panel for fiscal 2021. The public meeting has now ended, and any meeting guests, I don't think we had any, but if there were any, they may now depart, and the panelists will stay in the session. The meeting recording will be posted on the program website in the coming weeks, so you'll have a chance to look at it there. So with that, we have concluded the public session, and we are back to just the panelists. Thank you.